Welcome to Learning Curve, a look at what it means to teach and learn in the age of generative AI. I'm your host, Jeff Young, a longtime education journalist exploring the intersection of tech and education. What if you were designing the ideal teaching experience today, knowing that AI chatbots are possible? Imagine what education could be knowing these AI tools are in the world and that they could be used for teaching. That's the big question we're tackling this episode. And we're going to start by hearing the story of a former university president who has spent more than a year proposing what an answer to this question might look like. That university leader is Paul LeBlanc, who spent more than 20 years as the president of Southern New Hampshire University. During that time, he led a transformation of that campus. When he started, it was a residential campus with about 2,500 students. That is all still there, but LeBlanc was early to embrace starting online degree programs and tailoring them to busy working students who just could not get to a traditional campus. Wherever you live in the country, you might have seen a bus ad or some other advertisement for Southern New Hampshire University's online courses. It has grown into a mega college. Today, there are something like 200,000 online students there. 200,000. Last year, LeBlanc stepped down as president of Southern New Hampshire, and he decided that his next step was to explore whether and how AI might lead to the next big rethink of college teaching. He started a company called Matter and Space, and one of the first people he hired was George Siemens, who has been a longtime leader in thinking about how online platforms could reshape teaching. In fact, it was George Siemens who, back in 2008, taught a free open online course that first used the term MOOC, or Massive Open Online Course. As you might remember, that sparked a bit of a gold rush back at that time, as many big colleges started putting free online courses up. Though actually Siemens himself, he focused more on what he called connectivism and making collaborations among students online, instead of doing more passive videos, as a lot of people did with their early MOOCs. Anyway, not to get too into the weeds on all that history, but my point is to note that Paul LeBlanc and the folks he's working with now, they have some interesting history in this space. Earlier this year, LeBlanc's new company published an unusual video online that shows what he sees as a vision for how AI might fit into teaching. It's kind of like an artist sketch for a product rather than a product. And he says it was meant to spark some discussion about what could be. So in that spirit of getting discussion going, I also wanted to bring in another perspective to this episode, since not everyone agrees on what the right mix should be between human and bot in teaching. And so in the second half of this episode today, you will hear from another longtime expert on college teaching who responds to LeBlanc's video with her own alternate view of a critical AI literacy. Here we go. First off, highlights of my conversation with Paul LeBlanc. Okay, so it's been a year since you left Southern New Hampshire. You were there for so long and made so many changes, but I was intrigued by this question that you left the university with, which you just said, I'm now going to do. It was great. It was like out of a movie. You're going to assemble this like top team and go ask this question that a lot of people have on their mind. Like, in an era of AI, which we quickly seem to be entering, generative AI, what if you designed a new university from scratch, or if you thought of learning today without the constraints of the way we've done things traditionally, what would it look like? It seemed like that was the question.
Yeah, it was really the way that when George Siemens, the co-founder of Matter and Space, and I sat down at ASU GSV in April of 23.
Yeah.
I said, George, why don't you leave your joint appointment at University of Texas and University of South Australia, come join me, and let's figure out how we could reinvent learning if we were unconstrained by any assumptions. Like, we could use AI and not worry about accreditation, not worry about Title IV, not worry about how universities are supposed to look, but rather, what if we could just have a blank sheet of paper? So both a kind of incredibly exciting and incredibly daunting proposition, and George was crazy enough to say yes and shake on it. So that's what we've set out to do.
Could you walk us through the thinking, where it took you and where you've landed so far?
Yeah. So I think, George and I, when we began that conversation, had a set of what we were really seeking in the beginning were interesting questions
Mm.
or interesting hypotheses that could be tested out. So one was around the long held promise of personalized learning. And it had almost become a discredited phrase in higher ed because we've seen so many failed attempts or attempts that fell short of their promise, whether it was kind of adaptive learning systems or whether it was Newton, if you remember. And
He's referring here to a company called Newton that caused controversy back in 2015, almost exactly 10 years ago, when the company's founder, Jose Ferreira, made a claim about the power of the company's personalized tutoring system that many people saw as overhyped. In an interview back then, Ferreira said, "We think of it like a robot tutor in the sky that can semi-read your mind and figure out what your strengths and weaknesses are, down to the percentile." Many thought the actual product fell way short of that kind of language, and it led one prominent critic at the time to call Newton's product snake oil. Well, yeah, the robot tutor in the sky,
a robot tutor in the
the
sky
founder of
was
Newton
so
famously
maligned.
getting, yeah, exactly.
All right, so good reasons. So we thought, but maybe for the first time, AI will give us the tools and technology we need to do generally personalized learning. What we've learned is that the answer is we can. And I think it's one of the most fundamental shifts in the model we've built with our platform is that higher education is, with a little bit of variability, mostly still, as it has been for hundreds of years, a one size fits all model. That is, if you and I enroll in the same program at the same place, we're generally speaking going to have the same experience. You may choose some different electives than me, and will be variety. But the reality is, we're marching in a predetermined curricular pathway with a particular pedagogy towards a particular set of agreed upon outcomes. And what we think we can now do with our platform is create an experience or a learning environment in which 20 people in the same program would all end up with mastery of the same skills and competencies and outcomes at the end, but have 20 different experiences. And those 20 different experiences would be, and I mean dramatically so, because each one would be based very much on who you are as a human being. And that is everything from how you best learn, how you like to consume content and curriculum, um, when you are at your best as a learner, the level of your executive functioning. We integrate with wellness devices, so Whoop bracelets like the one I'm wearing, and Fitbits and Apple Watches. So to the extent that you want us to also integrate your wellness and well-being, the research is quite clear. My point in all of that is under the hood of the matter and space learning platform. It's called Ellie, by the way, LE1,
Yeah, I
learning
saw that in your
environment
video.
one. So the agent is Ellie. But under the hood with Ellie is a dynamically updated, robust learner profile that reshapes the experience in real time. Like what you're doing at this moment gets shaped by what we know about your learner profile. So that's a pretty big thing. Like that's a paradigm shift. Imagine if we can build learning where everyone in a in a program or situation or environment is getting learning delivered in highly, highly personalized, precise way. That's very powerful.
I really was struck by this video that you'll put on your website, the butterflies video. Do you mind? Can we talk about that for a minute? I want to, because I understand it's an interesting, it's not a demo. It's in fact, I think you label it almost like near future science fiction, so to speak. And I'll link to it in the show notes.
Let me say what it is because I think it's important for people who go to the Matter and Space website. You'll
Yeah,
find it
please.
right there. It's 5 minutes long. We commissioned
Yeah.
it. So much of what we've been talking about feels technical, perhaps abstract in some cases. Like we haven't got to the question of epistemology versus ontology. Like, what does that mean for a consumer, right? So what we wanted to do is say, look at all of this boils down to better learning and enriched human experiences. Could we create a little 5 minute vision video, if you will, that captures what it would look like if we could get it right? Because so much of the AI conversation is justifiably anxious and fearful. And I share those fears in many instances.
I mean, it feels like it's coming for jobs. It's an interesting
and
tough
lots
time.
of other things. I mean, coming for humans, maybe. I don't know. Like we've all watched the Terminator movies, right?
Well, there's a Megan movie hitting. Yeah.
So we wanted to create a vision of like, but these are choices. And we can shape the direction of the future. It's formidable because you and I don't work in one of the big AI companies, which seem to hold so many of the cards right now. But policymakers hold cards, and the decisions we make as parents hold cards, and as consumers, we hold cards. And we wanted to create a vision of what it could look like if we got it right. So that's what that video is.
Yeah, and so I want to play a little clip if you don't mind. Let me share my screen. So let's roll. I'm going to roll it from about 2 minutes in. Actually, tell us where we are in the video because we're not in a classroom at all.
Right. So the video was filmed on the Pine Ridge Reservation.
It's in South Dakota, right? It's not too far from where I am.
Arguably maybe the poorest community in the United States.
It is.
Financially low income wise, afflicted with all the ills that come with that, and also with an incredibly rich Lakota Sioux culture. Sarah Gilhart, the producer director, worked with us on this project. She is from the Pine Ridge originally. She's Lakota. And all the actors are Indigenous. And we did this with support of the community. And we did it there because the mission of Matter in Space continues to be to try to reach and serve those who are least well served by the incumbent system of higher ed. Who's not being well served today? How do we get the power of learning and connection and AI in their hands? So the scene is with the 5-minute video with sort of 3 phases in a young man's life: his childhood, then his sort of his adolescence, and then finally in his 20s. And what he's using is what we hope will eventually be a version of LE.
Today, Santa introduced me to Sophia.
Yeah, so this is the point. Oh, I love this. I'm glad you chose this part, Jeff. So this is, so by the way, you'll see a lot with smart glasses. We are in 2026, we'll start to integrate smart glasses into the platform as well. I have a deep conviction that smart glasses, AR glasses, are the future for how human beings intersect with the physical world and AI and ourselves. And we have lots of examples of how we will use it in assessment and so on, but also to connect. So the scene is young boy. We've kind of done the exposition, which is a slightly near future dystopic future. And now he's using the platform, he's using Ellie to connect with another young learner, and in this case, a Mexican community. And the reason I love this part, Jeff, is part of what we're trying to ask is, how do we use AI to be much more effective at knowledge transfer and learning? But how do we use that then to leverage community, connection, and the enrichment of individual humans? Because we say we're a human-centered approach to AI and learning, but what does that actually mean? Like, what does it look like in practice? And this is one of the ways this could look when we start to connect people. So you don't have, and I've always been interested in the idea of how learning takes place in the world at large versus a classroom. So we did not set it in a school, we set it in the community in which these kids live.
Okay, I'm going to roll like 30 seconds of it here. Let's just watch for a second, then we'll come back to you here.
My favorite is the monarch.
So at this point in the company's promo video, we see a Lakota boy sitting in his bedroom wearing a pair of smart glasses. And these let him do a video call with a student named Sophia, who lives in another country and is in part of another culture. The main character is sitting on his bed in his room, while Sophia gives him a tour of her bedroom, which is decorated everywhere with butterflies.
It has the most... She loves butterflies. Favorite animal. Well, technically, they're insects. They used to be everywhere. But I don't know anyone that's seen one. Her home is very different from mine.
Mathematics can help us understand patterns. From this flower to the spiral of our galaxy. Monarch caterpillars only eat milkweed. It's essential to their migration. Can you tell why this one is struggling?
There's so much to learn. I'm glad I don't have to do this alone.
If I understand it correctly, Ellie, the agent, is imparting relevant, related information to the subject matter that they're exploring with the other, and with a connection to another human friend, learner in another zip code. Yeah.
Yeah. That's right. And the idea being, again, that we can use AI to give the kinds of best teaching and expertise to a learner, even when that's not available to them, and also in a way that connects them to others and also helps them improve their community. Right. And this goes back to kind of the second question we didn't talk about, which is that one of the sort of hypotheses that George and I have is that universities in the future will shift their focus to being still about learning, questions of epistemology, knowledge making. There are lots of, I think, profound questions about what knowledge will now count. We can come back to those. But to share that focus with ontological questions of being. What does it mean to be a good human in the world? What is our relationship to this new entity that sits alongside us? Because we now have this powerful new, it's as if we've invited, an alien onto the planet. It's a little bit like the character in Rain Man, which is like, it's incredibly capacious mind, but doesn't quite know how to navigate the world very well. And we're going to be, almost, it's hard to imagine a job where we won't have an AI companion at our side. And lots of aspects of our day-to-day life. What does it mean? Like, what does that mean? And if you've read the novel, Clara and the Sun, like.
For those who have not read the novel, Clara and the Sun, I totally recommend it. It's by Kazuo Ishiguro, who won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 2017. The novel is told from the perspective of an AI robot named Clara, who is purchased as a companion for a child.
What is our relationship to the robot, right? I mean, these are no longer sci-fi questions. These are the questions of today. So we really start to think about how do we now think about universities and about learning as being much more intentionally connected to the holistic development of the user. So we don't talk about matter and space as creating a learning platform any longer. We talk about that we're creating a human development platform. And that it is about learning, certainly, about skills. That's probably why most people will come to it first. But that it's also about helping you be the better version of yourself. So your well-being, your wellness. And I can talk about what we're seeing in the early testing. It's kind of remarkable. And then the third part is about what we might call your, I don't know why we don't just use interpersonal skills. We say soft skills, we say enduring skills. Like, no, it's like communication, working with other people, navigating cultures that are not your own. So interpersonal skills is the third sort of leg of the stool for us. And when you pull those together, it's the most genuinely holistic approach to learning that we've seen. In other words, everything else is a point solution. We take parts of it. And if you think about universities, it's all like the traditional residential university has always had a healthy attempt to get at the human being. We create intentional communities, but we don't do it with much design. We kind of say, hey, Jeff, welcome to campus at the beginning of your 4 years. And we're pretty sure when you leave here, you'll be a better human being.
Well, there's tons of, and I guess there's tons of ways in which like there are clubs and there are sports and in a way you could argue that the design is very, it's a subtle assumption that there's a lot of offerings and people will take from this buffet and it'll all work out. Is that fair?
But the reality is we continue to produce Stephen Millers and Ted Cruz's, right? Like, so it doesn't always work to make better human beings. These intentional residential communities are kind of a buffet, but we don't measure, we don't know, like we don't subject that incredibly important work. Some would argue it's actually the most important work a university should do. And yet it's the one we give the least amount, like we don't hold ourselves accountable in any way. We don't give a lot of guidance. We say to the student, here's a buffet of things, knock yourself out. And what we know is that kid who doesn't engage with that community in the first 3 months is a high risk of dropping out.
I think what we're seeing, especially after the pandemic, is this crisis of belonging and almost like a buy-in. Like I feel like when you and I went to college, there was a sense of like shared like respect for the institution that I don't see as much when I talk to students today. Of like, of course I'm going. Like I need this. I understand the project, but I feel like that social contract, if you will, of like the whole package and buffet is kind of broken down a little bit when I talk to some students these days.
Yeah, and I think that we could talk about that was happening even before the pandemic. I think we've moved into a much more transactional relationship as a sector with our students. So we now talk about ROI and look at, I think a lot of this was our own doing as a sector. Given what we charge, why wouldn't someone say, is this worth it?
Well, you do need a job, especially to pay off those loans.
Exactly. And, we've done this massive cost shifting from government support to student support. So students paying on their own. So there are lots of reasons why that might be so. But my point is to go back to what we're trying to build. I do think that I'm really been interested in this question of, you know, higher ed as we know it is kind of going through an earthquake right now. And a lot of the buildings are going to crumble. And it's always like if you can survive the earthquake, then the question is, how do you rebuild and how do you take that opportunity to rebuild in new ways that were hard? Like it's easier to build from rubble than it is to renovate an existing structure, right? You clear the rubble and you have a clean slate. And I think in some ways it's a useful question to think about what does higher ed look like in 2030 or 2035? Because right now it's being shaken. Like we're in the earthquake.
I was struck by, even in this clip you've played and what we've talked about so far, I don't see a human teacher. I see Ellie, the AI agent, interacting with the student. I see a student interacting with another student. What is the role of a human instructor in this scenario?
So this is one I spend a lot of time thinking about because we actually could build a platform that is so good that at least traditional roles of teachers wouldn't like it would be you would be able to provide teachers where teachers are not available. But the danger is, of course, that we could start to displace teachers where teachers are available, right? Like we would have providers who would say, "Hey, this is great. Like I don't need," right? And so 2 years ago, it was interesting. I think we would say you have to keep a human in the loop because the AI is not that good. Today, I would say you have to keep a human in the loop because the AI is so friggin' good. Like we have to be really thoughtful as a society about where we displace humans or how we ask humans to play a different role. And when I think about teachers and the educational sort of structures that we live with, I think I would be asking teachers to play a very different role. And I think this would be very hard. My challenge to teaching and to teachers would not be a welcome one, I suspect, for many people. So here's how I think about this. I think we will now be, I'm going to back up. Mark Schlafman, Elizabeth Collins, Helen Heineman, the three teachers that transformed my life. I don't know that they were great teachers. I'm pretty sure they were, but I don't remember them because of knowledge transfer or their lectures or the way that I got smarter about A, B, or C. What I remember is that they made me feel like I mattered. They knew me holistically. They knew me as a human being. They cared about me. They understood my context. They demanded more of me. They helped me dream bigger dreams for myself. Kind of kicked me in the pants when I wasn't doing what I was possible for which I had the potential. Excuse me. Right, and those teachers are transformative. When I am on stage and I ask audiences to hold up their hands and say, you know their names. How many of those teachers did you have? Jeff, how many did you have?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I remember a couple from high school and college right now that come to mind. I know. Yeah.
And the average is 3. And I think we can, with this platform, build the feeling of that relationship, that kind of learning support, that kind of like that transformative power. I think we can capture that in the platform. One of our testers said, Ellie feels like my teacher, my therapist, and my friend. Now, I want to talk about the dangers of anthropomorphism because as we have gotten so good at this, it's actually scaring me a little bit. Let's come back to that in a moment. I want to stay with your question about what about teachers. So what I would argue, what I would love to see with our platform would be institutions or providers who say, I'm going to sort of treat this like the flipped classroom on steroids.
And the flipped classroom being, you watch the lecture video.
With Ellie, you learn the subject matter outside of class, on the platform, middle of the night, like whatever time that you are your best learner, and you're getting your wellness supported, and you're feeling good, and you feel like, Ellie's endlessly patient with me, and I can ask the stupidest question about calculus, and it's never judgmental, and right, all of that stuff we can do. We can adjust to reading levels. I mean, it's amazing how personalized we can get. And what I would ask teachers to do is to take classroom time and to curate that as community and as precious human time. And frankly, I would have no screens in the room. Like no AI, no technology.
No Ellie.
No Ellie. Ellie's doing her work as your genius TA on the side because the knowledge transfer is not the valuable thing anymore. Right? And if that's why you teach, and a lot of people love their disciplines, I get it. I was a faculty member and they want to be up in front of class talking about this stuff. And I don't just mean stage on the stage. I don't see a lot of that. Well, there's a fair bit of that, but I think, we do it, but they're in their discipline.
Yeah.
What I would rather see is that classroom time as the place where like, hey, we get to put, like you guys have learned, you've been working with Ellie. But Ellie's really good at moving the dial. Like you're learning this stuff. I'm going to use this time for us to now apply that learning. I'm going to give you really challenging scenarios and situations where you now have to take what you learned and show that you really can apply it. Because
without Ellie, without the AI prop helper,
it's no longer what you know in a world where you can know everything. It's what you can do with what you know. So I'm going to create situations. I'm going to do hands-on. I'm going to do experiential. I'm going to do enrichment. I'm going to bring people in. I'm going to have you working with each other. I'm going to have someone stand up and explain a thing that's pretty complicated and see if they got it right. And you all are going to sort of be the judges of that. Like you could use that classroom time to do amazing things. And future iterations of Ellie for the faculty who do want to use our platform that way, they would have a dashboard that would give them recommendations about how to use the time. So, hey, Jeff is killing it. He and 4 other are all really captivated by this notion. We recommend that in class time, you might put them in a group and give them this situation. Paul is going through a difficult, challenging time, which we can't share the details of. We recommend you spend a little bit of time with him today and don't talk about schoolwork. Just let him know that you're paying attention to him, right? Like as a teacher, I'm preparing to go into that precious classroom time, and my genius TA is basically giving me observations and suggestions. And I have agency. I can say, I'm not doing that, or I'm not comfortable with that, or I have something else in mind. But I have now I'm freed up, right, to really do the thing that we know matters most in teaching, which is human connection.
So I want to go back to the fear you have as you've put this in place. Like what is striking you?
We've said many times, if we are so good at what we do that learners just hold up in darkened bedrooms thinking that they're talking to humans, we should pull the plug. Like the questions we're holding ourselves accountable to are level of so data privacy and agency. So we want students to be able to always interrogate what we think we know about them. So Amazon thinks it knows a lot about you, Jeff.
I think it probably does, right? If it tracks what I buy and what I watch on their Prime. Yeah.
Yeah, they have data profiles of you. You can't interrogate that. You can't go look and ask, hey, what do you think you know about me? Right? And, I have 2 daughters, so my Christmas shopping is so weird that I'm sure I'm throwing the algorithms off. Like, this guy's buying young women's jeans for Christmas and also motorcycle parts. Like, what is this? And,
I understand. And then you're followed around the internet by ad for jeans. Yeah, for women's jeans.
Yeah, so your data profile is going to be an important part of who you are in the world, and we think you should have control and agency over that. Another thing we're holding ourselves accountable to is, are we thinking about learning and supporting learning that employs AI to make you smarter or to get a thing done? So this is an analogy I use a lot these days, which is maps versus GPS. GPS it's amazing technology. I use it. You probably use it all the time.
I'd probably over rely on it. Sure. Right.
So your point, right? It doesn't make me smarter. It just gets the job done. It gets me to where I want to go. I don't actually have to pay much attention. I
often don't know where I just went, so to speak. I wouldn't be able to retrace my step.
Compare that with the ancient technology of a map, which is a technology. And when I have a map, I get smarter. Like, oh, wait a minute. Now I know spatial relationships of various towns. I see I'm closer to the coast than I realized. Oh, there's another route I could take. It's slower. GPS didn't recommend it, but look at it. It's beautiful. I want to go up through the mountains instead, and so on and so on and so on. And I think what we're seeing, for example, with writing is that when students use AI to write an essay, it doesn't make them a better writer. And more importantly, it doesn't make them a better thinker. So you either have to rethink what writing is for, or how you redefine the act of writing, and probably move more focus from product. Is this a good essay? I'm going to grade your essay, to process. How did you
Mm.
think? Um, so faculty are facing these really interesting questions. But so another question is, again, this question of, are we using AI? Are we helping learners be smarter? Are we helping them get things done? And even that smarter question has to be examined, because what counts for smart in 2020 may not be what counts for smart in 2030. In other words, the cognitive maps are changing. Let me give you an example of what I mean by that. This was this was my research as a doctoral student, these many years
Oh,
ago,
there you go. Okay.
which was looking at technology paradigm shifts and how they change the noetic economy of a society. So how society changes, literally how we think differently because of tech. That old expression, we shape our technology, but in turn our shape techno. So if you remember, Socrates rails against the new technology of writing.
Yeah. Had some concerns about it messing up our ability to remember or think.
Exactly, right? So in the time of Socrates, in an oral culture, pre-literate culture, pre-writing culture, what you could remember literally equaled what you knew.
Mm.
Like you can only know what you remembered, right? And then maybe the second most important skill I could have would be networking, because geez, I don't know anything about hunting, but I'm going to talk to Jeff because everyone says he's an amazing hunter and I know Jeff, right? So networking was very valuable.
Sure.
We are now engaging in a much needed conversation about, what should our kids learn? How should they learn? What counts? What is the cognitive skills that are going to be most important? So I would argue that if I was a writing teacher,
Mm.
I would require all my students, if I were teaching freshman writing, to use AI. Absolute requirement, because that's what's going to be true of their future. I've had writing teachers say to me, we should ban AI. I was like, you want to ban the very tools that they're going to use in the workplace, the tools that will get them jobs? Like, that doesn't make sense to me. But let's rethink what writing is for and how it happens. And I would say, require your students to use AI, and then ask for three things. I want to see the prompts you use to generate this piece of writing. That's a process question and a thinking question. I will know a lot based on your prompts about how you think and what you know. Secondly, I want to see the draft, but pen the draft that it produced and show me how you improved it. What did you do? Whether you prompted the AI to improve it or whether you jumped in and did it yourself. How did you make it better? How did you know what better was? Right? So that's a process and thinking question. And then lastly, I would say, wherever AI made a factual claim, how did you know that was accurate? What did you do to test veracity? How did you know it wasn't hallucinating? These three things reshape how you teach writing.
I guess I think the interesting thing for me is, as somebody who has spent a career writing, is I think that's all very interesting, and I've definitely seen that. But I think at some point you do have to learn how to do that writing before you can be in the position to even smartly ask all those questions. So it gets back to thinking through the scenario you laid out for matter and space.
I don't know if that's true, Jeff.
Is it?
Well, I don't know. Like, let me ask you this question. I was a literature major as an undergraduate.
Oh, same here.
All right. So we both started off in classes where we learned to ask a whole bunch of really pretty basic questions. Who's the antagonist? Who's the protagonist? What is the plot? What are the key themes? Right? These are like the basic questions of literature. Like, let's just say novels for a minute. We read a lot more novels. We asked more sophisticated questions.
Right. The close readings later on. Right. Yeah.
And close reading was one approach, but we also learned about other literary approaches, literary theoretical approaches. And by the time we graduated, we were asking pretty sophisticated questions of any novel you put in front of us. Anyone put in front of us, right? I feel like you could give me a novel today, and I could give you a pretty sophisticated understanding of it.
Yeah, you could hone in on some detail and really spin out some interesting analysis.
Pretty high level assessments of the novel. I never wrote a line of fiction. I didn't have to write a novel in order to be really good at looking at novels and assessing novels. And there's a version of this that's happening now with code. So the reality is that software program is being blown up by AI. You still have to be really good at prompting your AI companion to write good code. You still have to have the right questions to look at what it produces to see if it's okay, right? You have to have a high level of understanding. I could argue that not unlike what I just described with the novel, I don't have to write a line of code now to be a good software engineer?
I think it's interesting, but I do worry a little bit back to the map analogy. You know, I am worse at reading maps than I used to be, and I do think yes, I have not written the great American novel, despite, you know, a dream when I was an undergraduate to maybe go do that someday. I've written some bad short stories. But the point is, like, even if I haven't written a novel, but I can analyze novels, I think it's a little different because I do think I have been taught how to write, you know, and do the constructing. Like, writing is thinking, as I think it was George Saunders or somebody said. It's like, good writing is good thinking. And so I worry that if you don't build the code yourself, in the code example, the writing itself, if you've never done it, or very rarely, or you don't build enough basic skills, I don't know if you're going to be able to really do what you're saying could be done with that assignment idea of, like, analyze a piece of text, or like give a prompt and then say this is bad because of X, when you haven't done it yet. And I guess that's the trick that feels like it, even back to what you said about, like, the worry of, like, if the classroom is to take away the device and get someone to replicate it, but if the assignment is not to create it from scratch, when does the student create it from scratch, do the mental energy of analysis themselves?
Yeah. And your anxiety seems well founded. I just don't know if either of us have a firm fix. So this is so new, right? So this is the conversations every discipline needs to be having. And not about what am I holding on to because that's how I know and how I learned, but how will we think differently and what does that require of us? And it may be that we conclude that no one should be able to sort of use AI for writing till they're, let's pick an age, 21, age of consent, you know?
Or you get a license to use AI for writing, so to speak. It's like you pass something that says, okay, now you're ready to go to the LE, you know, they'll write it for you, or whatever.
But it could very well be that there will be disciplines and cognitive skills today that we think are important to be learned in a certain way where we say, not important.
As I had this conversation with LeBlanc, I was really wondering what some of the professors I know would think of this vision. And I was really wishing I would have brought along an expert on teaching and to respond to this video that Paul LeBlanc said is supposed to start a conversation about these issues. So I decided to try something a little bit different for this episode. I sent the full recording of my conversation with Paul LeBlanc to a teaching expert that I know who has been thinking about AI's role in education a lot. The person I reached out to is Maha Bali, who is a professor of practice at the Center for Learning and Teaching at the American University in Cairo. And she took the time to listen to the conversation you all just heard, and then I connected with her via Zoom to talk about her reactions.
So first of all, I had heard about Matter in Space through friends of mine who are critical edtech folks. We call ourselves Continuity with Care. We had Twitter DM throughout the pandemic, which continued not just the first few months of the pandemic, but up until now. We just moved to Signal because everybody left Twitter/X.
Right.
And so we had been talking about Matter in Space. I do want to say a few things. Can I say these things up first? Because it's very important. So first of all, it's really important to say I'm commenting on the conversation you had with Paul and a little bit of stuff I've seen on the site. I have not had firsthand experience with the platform that we're going to be discussing here. And that's really important, right? This is how they describe what they've done and what we've heard them say, the discourse around it. It doesn't necessarily mean the platform is what I'm going to say about it. So that's important. Mm-hmm. I say this, and I have to also say I know George Siemens, and I've known him for maybe 10 years or more.
Sure.
And I've interacted with him a lot. I would actually consider him like a light friend as well. And we don't always agree. But one of the key things I do want to say about him is I learned about connectivism through him. And when I used to read about it, I didn't get it at all. But when I experienced it, I got it. So there might be things, I just want to give people the benefit of the doubt. There might be things they're doing that they're not able to explain easily, or it sounds like they're explaining it with hype, or they're explaining it in ways that sound like something else we know, but in actuality it isn't. But because we haven't experienced it, Maybe we're seeing it differently. The lenses we're using are not appropriate here. So that's always a possibility. I just want to give them the benefit of the doubt about that.
Sure.
However, I also want to say something else. As an Egyptian woman who works in the area of social justice and education, in general, I believe that socially just education needs to be designed with a justice lens.
Mhm.
And to design something with that kind of lens, it probably needs to be designed in a participatory manner where those who are most marginalized, those who are furthest from justice, are included in the design and not just served by the technologies we create, right?
Mm.
And so it has to be led or co-led by these people as full participants who set the table, not just are invited to the table at some point.
Mm.
So since I'm not seeing that people from the global south and indigenous people and people with disabilities and women and so on and all kinds of minorities, I don't see them prominent in this work. That already makes me skeptical about
Mhm.
whether it really does serve, everyone. So those are just foundational things to start with, I think, to just lay the foundation before I comment on particular things that Paul LeBlanc has said. I have never met or spoken to Paul at all, but I have met and spoken to George a lot, not in person, but a lot of online conversations.
Yep.
Some where we agree, a lot where we disagreed.
That's great. No, I appreciate the context, and that's important to note. So so the reaction there is one of who's participating in the design is what I'm hearing, and a question about if the tool or the platform LE, this AI agent, might end up, being used. I believe Paul LeBlanc was going off to Mexico to talk to people there about its potential use and was having interest by places that felt like they couldn't provide enough in-person teaching. And so could this tool be helpful?
You do know that a lot of places in the global south that can't provide that in-person teaching also don't have stable electricity.
Mm-hmm. So
if you're going to provide a tool, you need to have like solar energy or whatever. And solar energy is also not necessarily very cheap. And yeah, so there's a lot of those things about remote places. There are remote places in Canada and they haven't solved that problem yet. And this is a well-resourced country. So imagine the global south where they don't have stable electricity, obviously not stable internet in even better off places like Egypt and South Africa sometimes. So not even talking sub-Saharan Africa and the ones in the middle who are the worst off in terms of connectivity. So let's just keep that in mind as well. So that's important. And like the video they created, you said he went off to Mexico. The video they created, they said it was with indigenous actors with permission from the indigenous folks over there, but still they weren't involved in design of the tool.
as far as I understand,
They're recording the video with you. That
Mhm.
doesn't. So you thought of them at some point, but
Mhm.
not early on.
Mhm. Yeah, I
It
guess.
felt like a white savior type of video, honestly, to me.
Yeah, so that's an interesting reaction. Actually, I wonder, there is this clip that I played and looked at with Paul LeBlanc. I wonder if we could watch it real quick together. Just this short. I'm going to share my screen, so bear with me.
My favorite is the monarch. It has the most. She loves butterflies.
I played the same clip for Mahabali that I played for Paul LeBlanc earlier in this episode.
So lots of different things. So one of them is, this is kind of already possible. Just use video conferencing and meet people and let's talk, right? You can do a lot of stuff without all of this hologram type of thing. Although it'll be cool when it's there, sure, I don't mind. The other thing is the use of the glasses thing. I remember when Google Glasses, I think they created something, cardboard, I think it was called. And it was such a failure because it distracted people when they were doing things. So I'm scared of that tech that's going to be like right in your face the whole time. It's bad enough with the smartphone in your hand all the time. Now it's going to be in your eye, like you can't even look away from it. That's going to be kind of scary. So I'm not too excited about that one. I think the potential of AI for translation is beautiful and it's already here and has been here for a long time, as have the problems with it, right? I think one of the things they talk about later is about the translation, like they never learned each other's languages, but the AI is translating for them, I think.
Sure.
And
I think that
honestly,
is
I
right.
use AI for translation all the time, but I can only trust it in the two languages that I'm very fluent in, which are English and Arabic.
Okay.
And then the other element is that language is culture, right? If I think using AI tools for language translation is useful if you're just in the airport passing through, if you're just in a country for 2 days, you're not going to invest a year to learn a language that you're only going to be there for 2 days, right? But like my friend who just married someone whose parents speak a different language, I don't think you want to keep using AI translation for that relationship for the rest of your life, right? So there's culture behind language, and even when you read a translated book, if you don't know the initial culture, you're like, why are they doing that? Like, it's really difficult. Culture is complex and deep and takes time to understand. And when we teach languages, we teach culture along with language.
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
everything becomes translated by a machine that doesn't understand nuance and context and culture, yeah, it's cool for a little bit, but that their lifetime interaction is like this, I think, yeah, learn each other's languages, people.
So that's interesting. And so this idea that that the learners would be connected thanks to this AI agent, you're basically saying like there's all this technology that's been around for years that could have done some version of this, and the challenges are known. And so the idea that AI would solve these challenges is like, kind of far-fetched at this point.
Yeah, and I mean, I mean, I think there's a lot of reasons why people object to the use of AI in general or in education specifically, and especially generative AI. And related to what you were saying right now, there are two directions to go. Do we really need AI to solve this problem, or could we just solve it with humans or with simpler technologies that we already have that are less potentially harmful? And the other one is the AI that we have right now actually good enough right now to do this? So the good enough question could change with time.
If I could sort of summarize, and since you've heard it too, you can sort of push back if my summary is not quite right. But one of the things, it seems like Paul LeBlanc's argument was the opportunity with AI is to really like be there for students who might have questions outside the classroom, and sort of be so good at getting people over whatever their little obstacle they hit, whatever small obstacle they hit along the way, that they can do a lot of sophisticated work and project work, and more than in the past. And then when they're in class, somehow this then makes class better because of this kind of tutor-ish, in interaction with the agent. Is that, and what do you say to that kind of vision?
First of all, my first question is, what's new?
Mm-hmm.
You always had opportunities to ask other people, to search the internet, now to ask ChatGPT, whatever. You can give ChatGPT content or, any AI tool some content and ask it to answer the question from within the content so it doesn't go and hallucinate too much. We can already do that. I don't know what's new about this tool. But I also like going on discussion forums and asking other people. And why don't I just have a TA to help me with this, who's probably going to give me a better answer than the AI? I know there are like all these AI tutors now that there's one that I met with, and they were saying the AI tutor will give an answer, and then there will be a teaching assistant. If the AI tool is not sure that it's got the right answer, it's going to refer you to the TA. And the TA is going to revise its answers, and then eventually it will build its database and improve on itself so that it answers questions better. I think for very basic things, fine. But like, if you've interacted with these chatbots on websites, they're very clearly bots most of the time, and they're usually not very good. The AI summary of Google often makes things up that if you ask it about something that doesn't exist, it's not going to tell you it doesn't exist. It's going to try to make up a meaning for it. So
Right.
I think if you ask it really hard questions, I think when people test these things, they ask it questions that they know the answer is in the book. Ask it a question where the answer isn't in the book and see what happens. I created a chatbot once that was supposed to only answer me in Arabic. And at some point, I don't know what I did. I must have broken it because it started talking to me in Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what's this got to do with it? Like, that's not what I told you to do. Like, it just went off on a rail, just so those things happen. I don't think there's anything particularly new about any of that. I think the talk about personalization has existed for a very long time and has never, ever, ever done what it's supposed to do. Also very individualistic, but also personalization is always based on what do people who look like you based on some categories of data that we know about you do, Therefore, you must be like them. It's not personal at all. The only way you can really, really personalize something is by really knowing a person as a person and then responding to that. And any other way of doing it that's automated is either going to just use random data points that the developers decided were the important ones to collect about you and miss a lot of details. And even us as humans, I can't remember the name of the psychologist right now. He's a psychotherapist who used to say, we'll never know every part of a human being, right? So categorizing people is always problematic. It's reductionist, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other version of it that collects everything about you is surveillance. And so we don't want to normalize surveillance for education so that then surveillance becomes the norm. And then we're in a kind of 1984 George Orwellian type of future where everybody, governments and corporations know everything about you, right? So that is all not comfortable for me.
Yeah, so it is interesting, this idea that, if there is a breakthrough with AI and generative AI around personalization, there's a chance that the only way to get that breakthrough is through radical surveillance, is what you're saying.
It seems like that to me. I don't want to comment on something else, by the way, too, related to these very quick answers you can get from AI. I want to tell a personal story about a friend of mine who moved to a new country. And she has not made new friends yet. She's got 4 kids. She has a lot going on. She hasn't made new friends yet. So when she needs something, she contacts me. And the internet makes that possible. And it makes her have a social life even though she doesn't have friends in person, which I realize is not good for her, but it's a good temporary solution. So one time she texts me on WhatsApp because she needs to talk about something. And I'm at work, so it takes me like a couple hours to get back to her. And you know what happens in between? She's asked ChatGPT, and ChatGPT has responded to her. And it gave her this kind of combination between Islamic prayer and affirmation that no one ever would say in Arabic. But it was beautiful and interesting and whatever. And then she doesn't need me anymore. And I think that's very problematic, that you get used to this immediate gratification that you get from the technology. And then any human responding to you is too slow because if you have parents, you have 2 parents and you have like multiple brothers and sisters. I'm an only child, so I didn't have that problem. But if you have multiple children and you have 2 parents, then there's no way every parent will be there for you immediately when you want them, right? I was just at this AI for Good Global Summit in Geneva, organized by the UN. Lots of exhibitors doing what they call AI for Good. And one of the AI for Good things that they were trying to convince us of was this teddy bear that you give to your child. Who talks to your child and is there for your child. And I'm thinking, well, they're going to talk to this teddy bear instead of their parents and their siblings and their friends. And it says, no, it's not an addictive one. The parent can set it so that if the child starts to get too addicted, it starts talking to them less. And it will tell the child to go talk to your sibling and give them ideas of what to say to their sibling. I'm like, really? It's very much what Seymour Papert warned us of, and Audrey Waters always reminds us of, which is it's like the machine programming the human rather than the human programming the machine. And as soon as you take away people's agency by calling it personalization, but it's really the machine deciding for you what you see next and what you do next, rather than you messing around in this chaos of knowledge and trying to find something on your own and struggling a little. When children are motivated, they struggle and they find what they want. So when my daughter is struggling with something in school, she's 13 now, but when she was even 8 years old, she's struggling with something in school. She wants to give up because she doesn't like it. She's struggling with something in Minecraft. Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
She's struggling with something on the game Minecraft, and she wants to create something. She will watch videos. She will read. She will troubleshoot. She'll spend hours until she gets what she wants. And she's learned something. She's learned programming. She's been able to achieve what she wants, and she's proud of it. I think it's all about motivating children and finding what motivates them, rather than giving them easy ways to get things that we want them to know. Yeah. There's another thing Paul says. He talks about how all the children are going to reach the same learning outcome, but each one of them is going to reach it their own way. That I think self-determined learning is about each of them deciding what their learning goals are rather than us telling them what their learning goals are. And you don't need a learning environment. That's life. Life is you discovering what you want to learn about and you finding people that you want to learn them with rather than through this interface.
So it feels like the concern is stopping human contact just by being a little more convenient and just digital, so less awkward and maybe a little bit less socially challenging.
Yeah. So I think even if you think about people who are on the autism spectrum, obviously that's an extreme case of someone who really might struggle dealing with humans. And I can understand the value of this. However, I also know that the parents of students, of children who have autism also want, first of all, the rest of the world to learn to deal with them. So the rest of us need to learn to communicate.
Instead of just have them go always be with a digital chatbot.
And then because I think they're still humans. They have feelings. They still want to connect with people. They just don't connect with us the same way that most of us neuronormative folks connect with each other. And of course, we're all on a spectrum as well, right? I mean, we all accept that children don't speak, and we deal with it. Very young children, right, before they're verbal. Then we need to accept that there may be older adults who communicate in different ways, and we learn to deal with them. There were these AIs that help someone who is autistic write in a way that sounds more like a normal person, and that's problematic. We should learn to understand the text of someone who isn't like us. Mm-hmm. In the same way that a lot of AI is also, feeding into native speakerism. We have a professor in my institution who speaks very good English, but just has a little bit of an accent. And he just wants us to clone him, like deep fake him so that he sounds like a native speaker of English. And I'm like, no, everybody needs to be okay with respecting that a non-native speaker doesn't sound like a native speaker. And I say this, of course, with my mid-Atlantic accent, but I accept, I respect people who speak with an accent, and we need to get used to this diversity. Rather than try to make everyone sound the same. This is also very problematic.
Yeah, it's interesting. With the internet, we had filter bubbles where people were only, kind of in conversation with people that had similar views as them. But it seems like you're painting a picture of a concern about this kind of radical world in which everything is kind of normed and kind of smoothed over, the way things sound, look, and a shared culture that's very watered down, so to speak.
Does it sound very slippery slope to you? Am I exaggerating, you think?
I guess I don't know. I mean, slippery slope is one of those things that we've seen such fast change. It's hard to say nothing could happen. But so I am not somebody who's going to be like, oh, if that, it's crazy to think about futures. I think the whole point of this conversation is to imagine what this could roll out to, because things are moving so fast. So no, I wasn't actually pushing back, except for to say that, like, I guess, is that the concern you're raising? Just to clarify, like, is that the concern?
It's one of the concerns.
I also I was really struck by something Paul LeBlanc said, which is that if they feel like they're seeing their tool, this AI agent, being used to replace human interaction, which is one of your concerns, that they would pull the plug. And I wondered what you thought of that. Like, it's almost like they've even thought of this as a potential downside, is that people, the students, the learners would no longer kind of bother to consult people because they can get all the answers from this bot.
I'm just wondering why you need to test that. It's obvious. It seems obvious. Like, it doesn't, I don't see why you need to test that. It's already happening. It's already my friend who consulted ChatGPT when I didn't respond to her within 2 hours. I know they're saying you go into the classroom and you have no technology, and then you sit with people and you focus on them. And that's fine. That's just flipped learning. You don't need Ellie for that. You just need to give students something to do. They could read a book. They could watch a video. They could do whatever they want. I'm okay with Ellie doing that. It's just I don't think it's revolutionary is all. Yeah, like, if it is if this is all it's going to be doing, then it's not that revolutionary. So I don't see what's so special about it. But there might be something that I'm not seeing, But what I'm seeing is I'm not seeing what value added there is in all of this, honestly.
And I guess the other thing that I hear a lot, and I'm sure you see it in conversations about AI, is that if resisting is not possible because the world is changing and AI is going to be everywhere. And so the world of work and society after students leave the university is going to be infused with AI. And so it's sort of irresponsible not to introduce them and then give them tools and say, let's get used to using an LE type thing. And I guess, what do you say to that argument, which has seemed implicit in the conversation that I had
So
with
I got to
Paul?
be honest. First of all, I'm an educational developer, so I support people along the spectrum. And I say no AI shaming. If you find AI helps you, knock yourself out, use it, teach us how you're using it, maybe we'll benefit. And that's a lot of our engineers and sometimes people in the writing program even. And if you're someone who resists AI, I respect you. You probably have a good reason. You're not being lazy.
Mm-hmm.
I trust you. I trust your reasons for that, and we need to respect them. And there's a spectrum of reasons for it. In my own classes, I teach a digital literacies and intercultural learning course. So what I do is, first of all, from the very beginning, you're allowed to use AI. We're going to explore a lot of issues related to identity and bias and othering and ethics and inequity and oppression and all of that. And then we're going to apply that to AI and technology. And you're going to see how AI, I don't tell them this, but they get to experience this throughout the semester. They get to experience how AI reproduces oppression in all kinds of ways and reproduces bias in all kinds of ways. But they're allowed to use it however they want, as long as they let me know that they've used it and reflect on it. And towards the end, they're allowed to use it in a certain project in whatever way they want. I don't tell them use it here and don't use it there. And by the end of the semester, they're like, oh, I'm not going to use AI except to revise my grammar. I'm not going to use AI except for this. And sometimes they'll use it in certain things and say, oh my God, it's stereotyping my experience. This is no good. And other times, so different people use it for different things. And what I want to say is different people need that extra support from AI that they're not getting from human beings in different areas of their lives. So some people are good writers. They love the way they write. They hate how AI takes their voice. Some people are not good writers, and I'm not teaching writing. If I was teaching writing, I would take more time to help them with their writing. But since that's not what I teach, then they could use AI to help them with their grammar or whatever. That's fine with me. And I think the main thing is what we need to do to prepare students for AI is prepare them with good judgment and wisdom to then know whether or not to use AI in this thing in the first place. If it's a very critical, high-risk kind of decision, do you want to risk not having accountability over how you reach that decision?
Well, I guess one of the last questions I wanted to ask you is like one of the ideas inherent in what Paul LeBlanc talked about and what other AI folks often talk about who are really radically embracing things for quickly moving it into the classroom is that it's going to change the role of the teacher. And I guess I wondered if you think there's a role that somehow AI might change the role of a teacher, where it might be different. These chatbots, whether it's Ellie or something else, like might be different than previous technologies and might lead to a change in instruction.
Yeah. So first of all, I think the internet should have changed the role of the teacher, but not all the teachers changed. Like I think just the presence of the internet meant that we cannot be content centric in the way we teach. It should have changed a long time ago, and it didn't. Of course, the AI makes it easier because you can ask like a very specific question, and you don't have to be very good at doing Google research anymore because you can just ask the very specific question you want. Yeah, I think regardless of Ellie or whatever, ChatGPT and Gemini and all those exist. Students have access to them. Students are using them. That has happened. That ship has sailed. We can't change that. This we have to accept. That's the inevitability. The aspect of whether it transforms education or whether it's really going to keep working in all fields, I'm not sure. We'll see what happens. I do think we do have to rethink our assessments. And we need to rethink whether students are seeing things that are relevant to them. And we need to rethink whether we're supporting them enough or not.
Well, I guess one thing to leave on is, one thing I got from LeBlanc and many people that are, talking around AI and education is a kind of, very optimistic and utopian kind of hope that this can really move the needle and get more people, access and improve access to education, get more people learning at a higher level. Where are you in what do you think, what are your kind of prediction for how AI will affect education as it's going right now?
I think a lot of what you're calling optimism, I'm calling techno-positivism. Like, I think people are just overly positive about technology, and a lot of it is hype. And historically, it has never lived up to that hype.
Are we moving too fast to adopt AI in education? We being, the higher ed or education systems?
Well, obviously the corporations are pushing for that, and the administrators are neoliberal, and they don't understand pedagogy. And the teachers are suffering, and the students are going to suffer even worse. And I feel bad for people who are enthusiastic about tech. Not bad for them. I mean, they won't worry as much. And then the ones who struggle to learn new tech, I feel bad for them because they're always feeling like they're behind. They felt behind during COVID, and now they feel behind now. And with COVID, there weren't that many options, so you had to do something about it. But with this one, it feels like you're being forced to feel like you're behind when the students have access to it. So yeah, you are behind if you haven't tried it and you don't know what it does because you won't understand what your students have access to. But yes, moving too fast. So yeah, AI exists. We need to accept that it exists, that students have access to it, and that possibly there will be jobs that use it. I don't think it's inevitable that it will take over. I don't think it's inevitable that it will transform or whatever. I think it might be, especially for K-12, too fast. I've been involved in an accreditation body in the US and internationally, rate K-12, and whenever we're talking together, I say we need teachers to be able to recognize whether AI is going to be helpful or not to say how AI is going to be helpful as if we know it's a foregone conclusion it's going to be helpful, and then we just need to figure out how. I'm like, no. They need to figure out whether. The answer may be yes or no.
And just to be clear, my role in this is I think this is the conversation I think is worth having and so my view on this, I'm trying to be as neutral as possible because one thing I'm excited about is that I feel like people like LeBlanc are not talking enough to people like you in the critical pedagogy space and vice versa. And so my hope is that surfacing these views together will help people hear a broader discussion. So thank you for
there are people who have much more knowledge and expertise than me who are talking. So listen to Joy Bolamwini, listen to Timid Gebru, listen to Emily Bender, listen to Audrey Waters. They're usually women. Okay? Safiya Noble. We've been talking for a long time about these issues, and there are men too if they want, but I want them to listen to the women of color. Stop reading other white men for a while. Start reading women of color who know AI. Because you don't want to talk to people who don't. I had forgotten that I was a computer science grad until AI came back, and then I went back and said, yes, I have a PhD in education, but my undergrad was AI. Because I wanted these AI people to understand. I understand. I know how to create a neural network. I understand machine learning. Now we can talk.
Well, we could obviously continue this conversation. It will be continuing out there in various forms. But thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me, Jeff.
As you can hear, these two longtime education experts have come to some different conclusions about where they see AI fitting into education. I recently checked back in with Paul LeBlanc by email to see how his project is going. He said Matter in Space is planning to launch the first commercial version of the LE chatbot later this month. He said his first customers are Southern New Hampshire University and 6 universities in Mexico. He said he's getting a good reaction from testers and that the plan is to start with a limited pilot launch to make any changes based on user feedback first before going bigger. I ran some of Mahabali's critiques by Paul LeBlanc. Here is what he wrote back in an email. I have all my ongoing worries about the big questions. What do we do about anthropomorphism? How do we foster human connection and not replace it? How do we make it affordable to learners in the Global South and other low-income learners? Overall, he stressed that for him, doing these early experiments can help focus on what AI in education looks like when used in what he calls transparent, responsible, and healthy ways, unquote. I would be open to having him come back on and talk some more, or having Maha come back as well. I'd love to know what you think. Please send along your thoughts in a written email or a voice memo and send them to jeff@learningcurve.fm. I might include those in a future episode, so please note whether you want to use your name or be anonymous. This has been episode 2 of Learning Curve. And I hope you will help me get the word out about this new show. Please tell a friend you think might like it, or you can also leave a rating or review wherever you listen. The easy thing to do is just click the stars on whatever app you're listening on. That will help get us recommended by the algorithm. You can also sign up for Learning Curve Plus, where I'm going to be posting the full interviews with both Paul LeBlanc and Maha Bali. They both had a lot more to say on these issues and some fascinating insights. Just go to learningcurve.fm to find out how to get that. Some quick credits here. This episode was reported and put together by me, Jeff Young. And you can find me online at jeffyoung.net. Our music is by Komaku. I'll be back in 2 weeks with a new episode of Learning Curve. Thank you for listening.